Bitcoin is finally trading once again above $90,000. And this week has been a crazy one, so let's get straight into it and see all the trades that we have taken and the next trades that we have on the table. In my latest video, I was speaking about how I longed Bitcoin at $85,000, giving targets between $92,000 and $94,000. That trade has actually mainly been closed now with over $11,000 of profit. But as you can see, my entry was perfect at $85,000 and we're currently trading at $90,000. I had also shared a Solana long trade with you, which I have fully closed and on which I made almost $6,000. As you can see, my long trade at $85,000 played out perfectly. We had the move all the way up to actually exactly what I had said, $94,000, where I also entered a short trade just like I had showed in my video. Right here, I was waiting for this move above these highs, which triggered for me a short trade. And from there, we did indeed see a drop of about 7%. At this point, Bitcoin started trading in a very clear triangle, as you can see here. And I did trade a lot of this price action very, very well. I, for example, had this very nice long trade off of this SFP. I then traded this fake out of the triangle onto this anchor VWAP, which showed a very nice rejection. And as you can see, I had my trade live during the live stream, shorting at 94,000 for a nice 1.2k profit. I had actually predicted this trade way before. I then took another short trade right here. I then took another long trade at the bottom of the triangle, which, as you can see right here, made me another $700 on this platform and another 500 here. So this has been really, really fun. Once again here, the long I was talking about, over $1,000 in profit. And as you can see in this screenshot, we had actually sniped the exact bottom of the move. And then one last thing I do want to show you is this aggressive short trade that I took on Hype, which I closed in full profit for $500. And this amazing long trade on Light after shorting the high, followed by a massive drop, which led to a massive pump. Unfortunately, I was actually stopped by about 1 cent before the massive pump. But if you kept a little bit of distance below here, you would have had a great trade. So if you want to have access to these trades, I suggest that you enter the Discord with the link in the description. All these signals are completely free. Anyways, now let's move on to the next trades that we have on Bitcoin. So for me, Bitcoin has 4 main areas of interest for a new trade. As I was mentioning before, we clearly are trading in this upwards triangle. And once this triangle breaks either to the downside or to the upside, we are gonna have a very nice move. But for now, until we remain above $90,000, I expect for the next level to be hit to be around $96,000 to $97,000. This is where we have this big point of control from this huge range, which is perfectly lining up with the anchor VWAP, which I have taken from this high at 116, a very, very important high. So if Bitcoin decides to break to the upside and move towards this $96,000 to $97,000 target, I will be interested in looking for a short trade. I think here is where we have a lot of stop losses from previous shorts. This is very nice resistance. And what we can play off of is the fact that we could run into resistance and re-enter this triangle, which would result into a fake out. And then once we actually break the triangle and retest it, that's when we can expect a bigger drop for 2 targets, which I'm going to cover. So if we get a move towards the upside, this is how I would position myself into a short trade. Of course, this depends on the reaction that we get at this level. Of course, if this level gets flipped into support and held, then I would not be looking for the short trade, but I would expect continuation to the upside. However, if this comes into play, then the next support area that I will be looking at is at this daily level and daily naked point of control between 85 and 86.3, where once again, depending on the reaction, we can decide to take a long trade for a reversal. Of course, this depends on what gets hit first. If, for example, we break first and hit this level, then I think it is more likely that we can keep pushing past this 96 to 97. If, however, we first go to 96 to 97, that's where I would expect a deeper possible retrace, perhaps all the way down to $79,000 to $76,000. Of course, we always have to keep in mind that perhaps we could just take the liquidity below this low and have a reversal right there. So this is our first point of interest for a short. This is our second point of interest for a potential long. We then have a third point of interest right at these lows, which we can check. And then as a final one, we would have this area between 79 to 77,000, We do also have to keep in mind, however, that we have this value area low right here. And if price is to go towards that point of control and have a rejection, there is always the possibility of retesting this value area low, holding it as support. And that's also where, once again, if we get the right reaction, we can look for a long trade, because we could see the reversal actually right here. And keep in mind that if we flip this $96,000 to $97,000 level into support, there's a very high chance of moving first towards 105. And if we are to flip this anchor VWAP, which is the anchor VWAP from all-time high, there's a very, very high likelihood of going all the way towards 116,000. Therefore, we want to be positioned in a way that we can be protected both if we are to move down to that $77,000 target, or if we are to move up towards that 105 or 116,000. Because I do really think that once we break this triangle, we will move up very, very fast, either to the upside or to the downside. And the target to the downside actually matches really, really well with this support area that I was speaking about, whereas the target to the upside would lead towards that 116,000. However, keep in mind that for me, the biggest interesting area for a new long will be around this 85,000. So the best thing to do is to position ourselves in a short trade right here and in a long trade in case we move down here first. So whichever comes first, we can either first position ourselves in a short trade and then a long trade, or we can position ourselves first in that long trade and then potentially in the short trade. And then whichever side Bitcoin decides to break, either to the upside or to the downside, we will be protected and we will make sure to make money. So I hope everything is clear, and do remember that I teach all of these things inside my mentorship, where you could learn to trade exactly with my strategies. And if you're interested in that, make sure you join the Discord and contact me directly on there. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.